Ubisoft is going to be broken up, sold off, and all of their properties are probably going to go to China. Let's get into the article. The article here is from Tweaktown, which I've never heard of, but this is an interesting little article that I found. Ubisoft headed towards privatization and dismantling in 2025, industry expert predicts. Now, I will say, isn't Ubisoft already privatized? I mean, privatization maybe means something different to you, but to me, I assume it means, a private company owns it. Now, if we're going off of what has happened with these other companies, a lot of them end up being broken up, sold off, pieces going to different companies. Most of those companies are, generally speaking, Chinese owned or, majority Chinese CCP shareholders, which means that this is actually going to be closer to nationalizing Ubisoft. Now, maybe the company itself, I don't know, maybe that'll be sold off and someone will say, hey, we are Ubisoft, but they're not actually Ubisoft anymore. That could be a possibility, but I don't really see it. Video game industry expert and data analyst Joost van Drunen has dire predictions for Ubisoft. Who could have predicted it? Who could have predicted it? After a string of failed games, years of controversy, numerous creative and financial restructurings, and costly mismanagement. Yeah, and all of that shows in the games, doesn't it? Ubisoft isn't in a great place right now. It's to the point where Ubisoft is said to be considering partners in an effort to buy out all remaining company stock and take the games makers private. I see what they want to do. So they want to, instead of making it a publicly traded company, they want to take it all off the market. Okay, that makes sense for, I suppose, the privatization thing. The problem here is, again, this does, to a degree, leach out any of the incentives for making your stuff better and holding yourself accountable to your shareholders is kind of one of those incentives, is going, you know what, we don't want to be pushing activism in these types of things because it doesn't sell. Our shareholders are getting upset that their stock value is plummeting. So you know what, we're just going to go back to making games like we used to, and we'll make more money off of them. So the idea of selling this stuff off to privatize it, to insulate themselves more from apparently making bad decisions, is probably not a great deal. So I do wonder if there's some internal struggling here, where it's like some people just, they don't care that they're destroying this company by making games that are not good. They just want to get the message out. And if taking the company private is what it costs to make that happen, that's what they're going to do. The idea is to go private before someone makes a hostile takeover attempt. Tencent is one such partner. And rightly so, given the share position in both Ubisoft and Ubisoft's principal shareholder. Ubisoft's majority shares are in control of the Guillemot family under a company called Guillemot Rose, of which Tencent has 49.9% stake. Now, if you're unaware, Tencent is a Chinese company, and if I'm not mistaken, it's like 100% owned by the CCP. So, I mean, realistically, if you're partnering with Tencent, you're partnering with, the CCP. You're partnering with the Chinese government. And some people have said that this is a strategy of pushing pushing identity politics, activism, woke ideology in Western markets while banning it at home. Now, I mean, this is happening. There's absolutely no doubt about it that the CCP is banning those ideologies, not necessarily because it's a strategy, but because it probably disagrees with their political ideology and their political power. So the downstream effect of that is that when people get tired of the, woke ideology, or, however you want to describe the things that are going on now in Western media, well, really, they only have a couple places to turn, and Asia is essentially the biggest exporter of media. Now, that could be Japanese. That's why manga has been doing so well, and anime. Could be South Korea. This is why K-dramas, K-pop, and these types of things are also very popular. Or it could be China. Now, China, I mean, I don't want to rag on Chinese people versus China. I've got no problem, ragging on the Chinese government. They richly deserve it. The issue is that they tend to not actually be able to create things on their own. That seems to be something that they have not really cracked. Black Myth Wukong potentially is a anomaly and, the exception that proves the rule. I would also say that I don't know the exact makeup of the company. I think it's Black Isle Studios. I don't remember exactly. That made Black Myth Wukong. I do remember that when it was announced, they had a massive, huge, worldwide hiring fair. They were like, hey, please, if you want to work on this game, send us your resume. We'll hire people. And I think they hired like a ton of people. Now, if that means that their entire team is not based in China or not Chinese, kind of proves my point. But I don't know the exact makeup, so I don't want to make those claims. It's just, it is weird that Black Myth Wukong is really the only game I know of that's come out of China that's been successful and apparently good. So, Ubisoft being bought up by, the CCP, a Chinese company, is kind of how they solve this creative dilemma. They grab up already extant, actually fundamentally good properties like an Assassin's Creed, and then simply go, okay, we're now gonna get rid of the stuff that wasn't working and we don't care about, and we'll make bank, especially because the stock price that we bought this at was massively deflated and not at all reflective of the actual value of these properties. It was the current price with all of this extra, ESG, identity politics baggage on top of it, which, brought the share price down. We're going to ditch all of that, and then bam, all of a sudden we made a huge profit. Not bad work if you can get it. New reports say that Ubisoft's shareholders are currently involved, meaning a plan could be executed in the coming months. Some industry experts like Joost van Drunen, founder of now-absorbed analyst firm Superdata, believe that the French publisher will essentially be made private while it sells pieces of itself off. The interesting thing here is, I don't know if Ubisoft, obviously, is Ubisoft, the studio, actually worth a lot of money? Or are their properties the things that are worth money? If Assassin's Creed gets sold off to somebody else that is actually going to do the series justice, who does that hurt more? I would say that hurts Ubisoft. I don't think Ubisoft is a name people really care about. That's not a brand that I put stock in anymore. It's good long while. Neither is Assassin's Creed, but the Assassin's Creed story and world is interesting, and therefore, that still retains some value, even if the games have been terrible of late. In his latest newsletter post, Van Drunen writes, Ubisoft is headed for privatization and dismantling in 2025, with its share price plummeting from $28.19 to $12.30 year over year. That's a big drop. The company has become an attractive takeover target. Its valuable assets, particularly Rainbow Six Siege and the Assassin's Creed franchise, could be worth more separately than together. Yeah, that's accurate. Now, maybe this is why we should be praying for a hostile takeover that is going to sell off pieces of Ubisoft as opposed to getting, Tencent having their claws in all of these things forever. So maybe we should be doing that. The upcoming Assassin's Creed Shadow faces stiff composition from Ghosts of Yote, and recent failures suggest deeper organizational issues beyond individual game performance. I think they're one and the same. Individual game performance, okay, maybe not, but how about the aggregate of all of your games over the past number of years? They've all been bad, they've all performed bad. So, obviously, yes, those are the result of organizational issues, but the organizational issues, made your games perform badly. They're one and the same issue. Let's be honest here. Ubisoft's development approach remains stubbornly outdated in an era demanding player engagement and community building. Is that really the case? I don't think that's true at all. I don't think there needs to be player engagement, except in the sense that you need to make a game that players want to engage with, that is good and worth their time and money. If you make a good game, players will talk about it. They will create a community around it. Look at Skyrim. That thing has been re-released how many, like half dozen times. People buy it every time because the community, through no work of Bethesda, was and still remains to be wildly vibrant and thriving. It's incredibly creative. They're making new models all the time. People love replaying that. Why? Because the game's good. Without a fundamental shift in how they develop and maintain games, they risk further alienating both investors and players. Well, if they don't have investors anymore, and it's all just owned by, Tencent, they're not going to alienate anybody. The X-Defiant shutdown isn't just another failed launch. It's a symptom of a company that insists on catering to a passive audience while failing to recognize the urgency to rethink distribution. Is that really the case? Is it distribution? Certainly Ubisoft definitely does and has had an issue with the sort of microtransactions, pushing those into the games. No one likes those, especially because they make the games feel cheap and chintzy and really crappy. I don't know if the passive audience is accurate. I think everyone is actually engaged with these things. This is why when you have some horrible take about, the new Assassin's Creed set in Japan, people, get up in arms about it. They're not passive. They just don't like what you're doing. And that leads them to, only hate engage and then disengage. They're going, nah, I'm not playing it. I'm not even going to hate play it. Maybe I'll watch somebody else play it, but to be honest, I don't care about it. You've made me not care about this franchise. I'm not paying money for it. No way. Not happening. Well, what do you think? Is Ubisoft consigned to the dustbin of history? Or could it rally? Should we allow it to? Or should there be a hostile takeover? Let me know in the comments. Good luck in all your attention, and I shall say farewell for now.